Doodlebomb here, and in honor of Uncharted Among Thieves launch day's 16th anniversary, I made my very own Cintamani stone light. I've been wanting to make a light up Cintamani stone since I very first conceived this year long Uncharted challenge. And it finally became a reality when I discovered that there is a clay that when it bakes semi translucent. So, armed with that knowledge, I went and got some teal colored clay and some tea lights from Walmart and got to work. The very first step, as always, is making a plan. Here I drew out the Chintamani stone from the game and quickly realized that in the game it has roots on the top and the bottom, and it actually goes up into the ceiling. And since I didn't want this project to be a permanent fixture in my house, I figured I better just only do the bottom roots. Once the plan was hatched and materials were gathered, I began work. First, I started by just making kind of a little egg shape out of the clay that would eventually bake translucent and shaping it around the tea light just on the top because I knew I wanted to build the roots up around the sides. And once I was happy with that, I actually rubbed around the whole outer shell of it with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of some of the fingerprints I'd left behind because I really wanted to make sure it had kind of a gemstone sleekness. Once baked, I checked to make sure that it really did bake semi translucent, and I totally did this off camera completely on purpose to avoid spoilers and not at all by accident. Then I started building the roots around the bottom because surely I could just build on top of this tea light and this plastic could withstand 30 minutes at 230 degrees Fahrenheit. I started building up the trunk by first rolling out a bunch of little roots and then a few flat pieces just to build up the thickness of the trunk, and then laying the roots on top of that. Once the roots were laid down, I would then smoosh them into place and try and give it a more natural look. Adding the roots, giving them an overall shape, and kind of blending them into the surrounding area took quite some time, but once that was done, we got to go on to one of my more favorite parts, which is the texturing. I did this by using whatever plastic tools I had, an X-Acto knife. I used the toothpick quite a bit, and anything that I saw within arm's reach that I thought might have a good effect. Once I was happy with it, it was time to put the whole thing in the oven, this time with the tea light inside, which is definitely not going to be a problem later. Since I had about 30 minutes to kill, I thought why not start experimenting on the other tea lights that came in the little set that I got at Walmart. My plan was to replace the yellow light that came inside of it with a blue light that I may or may not have harvested from my mom's Instant Pot. The reason being is that I thought a blue light inside of the teal would make it look a lot more vibrant and supernatural than the yellow light. I had never soldered anything this tiny before, and I definitely had some growing pains figuring it out. Once I accepted that a craft mat's purpose in life is to maybe get a little bit melted by a soldering iron, I was able to solder that boy together and it turned out pretty cool. About this time, the roots were done baking, and I discovered that the Walmart tea lamps do, in fact, melt at 230 degrees Fahrenheit. But I had been playing with this little blue light anyway, and I thought it was going to look way more awesome, so it worked out just fine, and I ended up just pulling out all the little melty bits and putting in my new little project instead. And don't worry, this was only a test fit. I took it back out and I shortened the wires a little bit so that the light wasn't so far on the end, and I put electrical tape around the joints so that there would be no chance of crossing wires. And here I get to start doing a bit more texturing. I know we'd already done a bunch earlier, but once it's baked, then I can use the X-Acto knife and make some really sharp lines to accentuate some of the edges and give some more bark texture variation than just whenever I was pushing into it when it was soft. Then I attempted to do a brown wash and then dry brush whites on, but I couldn't find my acrylic paint, so I ended up making a wash from ink. And then I tried and failed to use several whites I had around the house that were not acrylic until I decided that ultimately it was better to put the ink wash on and then just wipe away the edges with a Q-tip to bring the highlights because the roots are already white colored. After that dried, I went to put on a glossy Mod Podge sealer, and it essentially reacted with or reliquefied the ink wash I had done and made the project look entirely different than I had planned. But I freaking love this thing. I think switching to the blue light was definitely the right choice. And I had a great time playing with clay and electronics. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more projects like this, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you have any Uncharted project ideas, please drop them in the comments below because I will definitely be tempted to do as many of them as I see written. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you on the next project.